They were friends from a poppy ad in a turf war with alien greasers.
Forget those Earth nerds, Bridget. You belong with me.
You're the nerd, Zork Zork.
I know you are, but what am I?
Seriously? That's funny?
That phrase is still new on our planet.
Will Zork Zork be Bridget's true love? Find out in Greasers from Space. Coming to Tubi, if enough people like this trailer we just made.
Fantasy movies on Tubi will be free forever.
Forever?
Forever.
You're telling me I'll be a goblin in a bog? Forever?
Forever.
Oh, no!
Hello, everyone. I'm Gus from Askewed Reviews. And today is Saturday, which means it's a new episode of Cinema Society Saturday. Now, if you don't know what that is, that's where a group of us content creators have all come together. We then each week are randomly given a theme. We then partner up, give our partner a movie that fits within the theme, and then we review those films for all of you. So if you weren't able to figure it out from the intro, the theme for today is Tubi Treasures. These are all horror movies that can be found on the streaming service Tubi. Because if you're not already using it, it's actually a great option. No cost, hundreds of different options, especially if you're a big fan of horror movies. Now, as for who my partner was for this week, it's one of our newest members to the group, and that would be Jillian, also known as Final Girls Anonymous. If you're not already following her, definitely go and do so. She has some really fun content to check out, and let's see if we can try to get her up to 2,000 followers. Now, for this week's theme, Jillian gave me the film of Dumplings, the 2004 film directed by Fruit Chan. So right away, I do have to mention this one was a bit difficult for me to get through. Not due to the content, even though I'm sure there are going to be some people that is difficult to get through. But there were a lot of detractors, at least for me. Number one, it is a foreign film, which I don't mind, but it was in subtitles, which my ADHD brain, it's a little difficult to watch and read at the same time. So that I wasn't enjoying too much. Second, it was a bit artsy at times, and anyone who watches my content knows that I really don't like artsy films. And third, it really got confusing at moments. Not that I couldn't piece things together, but there was just a lot of unanswered questions, at least in my own opinion. Now, I do hope my partner Jillian does not take any of this harshly. I don't mind being given movies that I'm not a huge fan of, mainly due to the fact that I always like being able to check another horror movie off my list. As even though it's an impossible task, I kind of want to just see if I can watch every horror movie that exists. Like I said, it's not going to happen, but I'm going to try. Also, do keep in mind, everything I just mentioned was detractors for the film, not necessarily anything that made this movie bad. It just wasn't one that I thoroughly enjoyed. But let me tell you more about the concept, because maybe this is one that you would find more interesting than I did. So in the film, we meet one of our main characters, Mrs. Lee. She is a fading actress who, unfortunately, is not really happy with her marriage, as it seems like her husband, Mr. Lee, who is a businessman, is more than likely and definitely is cheating on her. Now, he's of course deciding to go with younger women, as she feels that not only her career, but her looks are now fading. So in an attempt to change herself for her husband, which is always a terrible idea, she decides to reach out to a local legend named May, or Aunt May. This woman has some very famous dumplings that supposedly can rejuvenate you or even give you your youth back. Now, Aunt May is an interesting but also very odd individual. However, though, she claims to be much older than she is, and she definitely does not look it. She is very beautiful and claims it's all due to her dumplings. It is revealed very quickly that the secret ingredient of her dumplings is fetuses. And the more far along they are, the more rejuvenating properties they have. So what dark depths is Mrs. Lee willing to go to regain her youth when her primary reason to do so is her husband? And aside from herself, is Aunt May or anyone else hiding some darker secrets? So like I said earlier, I'm not the biggest fan of this film, and it's not due to the subject matter. In fact, I thought that was an interesting and horrific and grotesque way to go. I also want to give a shout out to the props department for the design of the fetuses and stuff like that, because they did a good job on that. And in general, I didn't think that the acting was bad. It's just there was some really kind of confusing things or unanswered questions, at least in my opinion. And like I said, it almost had this weird kind of artsy feel of, is this a film or is this just kind of more of an exploration? I did kind of feel like if this had been shortened down, it could have made a great episode for like Tales from the Crypt or The Twilight Zone. But I don't know. As a full-length movie, I did get pretty bored throughout it, but it wasn't the worst thing. So, at least for me on my scale, I'm going to give Dumplings a 2 out of 5. Obviously, everything I've mentioned is just my own opinion on this film. Maybe you'll enjoy it much more than I did, so definitely still check it out. You can find this, obviously due to our theme, on Tubi. And as a huge trigger warning, though, going into this, as I said, there are fetuses and the removal of them, so that might cause a lot of issues for some people. Once more, I am going to mention, go and start following Jillian. She has some really fun stuff to watch. And another great reason to do so is to check out the movie that I give her to review. And that would be the 1990 film, The Suckling. Also, by the way, Jillian and I messaged each other and found it darkly humorous that we each gave each other horror movies that involve fetuses. I hope you enjoyed my review of Dumplings, and if you've seen it before, let me know what you thought about it in the comments. And if you want to see what everyone else in the group did for their Tubi Treasures reviews, just look up the hashtag Cinema Society Saturday.